I settled into the cozy corner of my couch, wrapping myself in a warm blanket with a cup of tea and a cheeky biscuit. It was just another quiet evening alone, waiting for my boyfriend, Mark, to return from his late shift. He was an area manager for a main chain restaurant in England, and his job often took him to multiple locations, keeping him out late. Tonight, he'd promised to be home around 3 a.m. The clock struck 2 a.m, and I was engrossed in a thrilling episode on Netflix when the intercom buzzer jolted me from my reverie. My heart skipped a beat. Who could be buzzing at this hour? I tried to shrug it off, assuming it was a neighbour who had forgotten their key, and continued watching my show. The buzzer rang again. This time it was longer and more insistent. I paused the show, feeling a prickle of unease. Our flat was on the second floor of a building with a security door that locked at 10 p.m. Only residents with a key could enter. I got up and peered through the peephole, but the hallway was empty. Curiosity and caution tugged at me as I walked to the bedroom window, which offered a view of the main entrance. I peeked through the curtains, and my blood ran cold. 5 well-built men stood outside, their faces shadowed by the dim streetlights. The man in front pressed the buzzer repeatedly, only stopping to confer with his companions. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and called Mark. He answered on the second ring, his voice calm but concerned when he heard the fear in mine. "I'm about 45 minutes away, Sarah. I'll call my dad, Luke. He'll be there soon. Just hang tight." I tried to steady my breathing as I waited. The men hadn't moved, and the buzzer continued its relentless assault. I kept glancing out the window, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Why were they targeting my flat? What did they want? After what felt like an eternity, I saw a familiar figure approaching the entrance. It was Luke, Mark's father, and a retired police officer. Relief washed over me as he confidently strode up to the group of men. From my vantage point, I could see the tense exchange. Luke demanded to know what they were doing there. The leader of the group, a burly man with a shaved head, claimed they were visiting a friend who lived in my flat. Luke didn't buy their story and told them to leave, making it clear he wouldn't hesitate to call the police. The men hesitated, but eventually turned and walked away, casting angry glances over their shoulders. Luke watched them until they were out of sight before using his key to enter the building. Moments later, he was at my door, and I let him in with shaky hands. "Are you all right, Sarah?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. I nodded, though my nerves were still frayed. We sat down with a cup of tea, and Luke reassured me that everything would be fine. He explained that the men were likely part of a local gang, looking for easy targets. His presence had scared them off, but it was a stark reminder of how vulnerable I was living alone. The next day, Mark and I discussed what had happened and decided to upgrade the security of our flat. We installed additional locks, a new alarm system, and even a couple of security cameras. We couldn't take any chances. A few days later, I found a note slipped under my door. It read, "We will be back." Fear gripped me, but I was determined not to let it control my life. Mark, Luke, and I devised a plan. We alerted the police, and with their help, set up hidden cameras to catch the men if they returned. Sure enough, they did. This time, the police were ready. The men were caught and arrested, charged with attempted break-ins and harassment. The ordeal was over, but it left a lasting impact on me. I learned the importance of vigilance and the value of having loved ones who cared for my safety. Mark and I moved to a new location, a safer neighbourhood where we could start fresh. The experience brought us closer, and though the memory of that night still haunted me, I knew I was stronger for having faced it. Living alone had taught me independence, but it also reminded me of the power of community and the strength found in unity. And as I sat in our new home, with Mark by my side, I felt a sense of peace and security I hadn't known before. I moved into my quaint little apartment in February of last year. It was everything I had hoped for, a peaceful sanctuary away from the bustling world. My landlord, Mrs. Olivia, was a sweet older woman who treated me like family. She often brought me homemade meals, leaving them outside my door with a gentle knock, a small act of kindness that brightened my days. As someone who worked from home and preferred solitude, I cherished the quietness of my new home. The first few months were blissful. I spent my days working and my evenings curled up with a good book or my favourite Netflix shows. Life seemed perfect. Then in April, things started to change. At first it was small, almost unnoticeable, a misplaced shoe here, a slightly moved picture frame there. I dismissed these as signs of my anxiety and the side effects of my new medication. The pills made me drowsy, and I often found myself taking naps during the day. One afternoon, I woke up from a nap to find the bedding on the opposite side of my bed disturbed. I always slept on my right side, and the left side was usually untouched. But now it was warm, as if someone had been lying there. My heart raced, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Was it possible I had tossed and turned in my sleep? I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but it lingered. Over the next few weeks, more odd things happened. My toothbrush was moved, clothes were not where I had left them, and I started noticing a strange, musty odour in the apartment. I told myself it was my imagination, that the medication was playing tricks on me. One evening, Mrs. Olivia brought me a delicious Greek salad. I ate it while watching Portlandia, then drifted off to sleep on the couch. When I woke up, it was already evening, and the room was dark. I felt a chill as I noticed the same warm spot on the bed. Someone had definitely been there. I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. I called my parents and asked if I could stay with them for a few days. They were worried but supportive. When I arrived at their house, I finally told them everything. Speaking the words out loud made my fears feel more real, more tangible. My father insisted on going to my apartment to check things out. The next day, he returned, his face pale and his hands trembling. He had found something written on the walls of my bedroom. "Come back, baby, please." The words were scrawled in a messy, frantic handwriting that sent shivers down my spine. We immediately called the police. An investigation revealed the horrifying truth. Mrs. Olivia's son, Henry, had been sneaking into my apartment for months. Using an extra key, he would let himself in, drugging the food his mother left for me to keep me drowsy. He watched me sleep, touched my hair, and even kissed my shoulder while I was unconscious. He believed we were in a relationship, though I had never met him. The police showed me his confession on tape. He spoke of me as if we were lovers, describing intimate moments that never happened. He had collected my hair, clothes, and even my trash, creating a shrine to me in his own room. The realization that someone had been living a double life inside my apartment, watching my every move, was beyond disturbing. Henry was arrested, and Mrs. Olivia was devastated. She had no idea her son was capable of such a thing. I moved out immediately, staying with my parents until I could find a new place. The thought of returning to that apartment, where I had felt so safe, was unbearable. The experience left me shaken and paranoid, but also wiser. In my new home, I installed multiple locks, a state-of-the-art security system, and even a few cameras. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings, determined never to let something like this happen again. Living alone had once been a dream, but now it felt like a risk. I learned the importance of staying connected with loved ones, of not isolating myself completely. The world could be a dark place, but I was stronger for having faced one of its shadows. As I sat in my new apartment, I felt a renewed sense of vigilance and empowerment. The silent intruder had taught me to value my safety and trust my instincts. And though the memories of those terrifying months would never fully fade, they had made me more resilient, more aware of the hidden dangers that lurk in the quiet corners of our lives.